step 5, friends. Step 5, we're going to now, you guessed it, cut on those lines. So it doesn't matter which one you start with, but once you cut, you can only cut once, if that makes sense. You can't trim. So on my first cut, I have to make my cuts the most precise I can and stay on those lines. So I'm going to start with my red line, and this might not be the best since I'm on camera. I'm going to stay as close to being on that red line as possible as I'm cutting this out. That will leave me, when I'm done with my red line and only cutting once, if I mess up, if I get off the red line, and I did a little bit on this little one, I don't know if you can see that all that well or not on the paper, but I was a little off. You do not go back and cut. Do not go back, okay? You have to leave it alone. So if you're a little bit off, you have to leave it like that. And then the second part is to cut on the black line. So I'm going to do, and that will be making my final cuts, 1 on that one, and 2 on this one. And at the end of this step 5, I should have 4 single pieces, and I have to be really careful here because this one's tight. Okay, I edited that a little. Okay, so at the end of this step, I have 4 pieces. I have an A piece, a P piece, an R piece, and a T piece. Okay, what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to spin them, okay, so that the corners turn towards the center. And I'm going to start with the T up here in the upper left. Right next to it, to the right, I'm going to put the R. To the bottom of the T, I will connect the A. And to the bottom of the R, I'm going to put the P. Okay, so I've spelled now the word trap. And I've lined up, I should have what looks like a perfect cross in the middle if I've lined up my corners correctly. It is very important on how accurate here you line up those corners and that middle. So what I do now, because we have to tape this piece together, I start with a single piece of my tape, and sometimes I break it to make it a little smaller, and I have little pieces. Okay, so I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'm going to, if you can see this, stick it so that it's a little bit hanging over the edge of the T like that. You can see that. Okay, so that when I lay it down next to the R, and I can line it up, it will stick itself a little bit until I can come back and tape it a little better. So it just adheres it for me, that little bit, so that I can come in now with a real piece of tape. I need to make them small because my tape cannot hang over the edges. I cannot have any tape hanging off the piece. It all has to stay on the center of the piece. And then I'm going to do the same concept to connect the bottom. I'm going to take the T again. I'm going to put a piece down like this, down that center of the cross, leaving a little edge off. And that one's more on the R side, so I'm going to connect my best, the P, right there in the center, lining it up as best I can. No overlap, no pieces like sitting on top of another. Even my P's a little bit forward. I'm going to move it back a little bit, lay it down again, and line it up right in that center. So important to your final product, because it mathematically will not come out right if you do not line them up nice and neat. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll take a little piece of tape, cut it tiny, hang it over the edge of the T. See how I put it just like that? And then I'm going to lift it up so I can sit the A right in there. I don't want her to overlap. Okay, line it nice and neat up. Okay, and I can play around with it if I need to move anything, but that looks pretty accurate there. And now I'm just going to reinforce everything. Remember, no tape can come out past the edges. I want all the tape just on the actual card and not hanging over, because that will ruin what I'm tracing. It will ruin it. My A is a little gapped here, and I need to fix that. I'm going to line it up a little bit closer. I mean, that made it better. Okay, if you can see that. And because it had a little bit of a gap there that I didn't want. Okay, so I'm taping, no tape. See, I see this little piece of tape hanging off my edge. I'm going to trim that. I do not want any tape going past my piece or towards the edge, near the edges, because that will interfere with you tracing this. Once I've taped the front really well, I'm going to flip it over to the back and reinforce the back too. And again, the same thing, no tape going off the sides of the piece. Okay? And so that, once I've got all that reinforced, it's nice, no taped edges, my piece is ready to go. That is the end of this step.